Sunny Bonani viewers, welcome to today's episode of Load Shedding, a show that focuses specifically and explicitly on the current affairs pertaining to the continent of Africa. And today we shall be focusing on a somewhat negative topic. My name is Kees Kibinda. Libya was the very first African country to gain independence from its former colonial master in 1951. Other African countries followed suit, with the 1960s probably being the busiest decade for countries to be gaining their independence in. And of course, afterwards, some other countries still had to gain independence as well. Now, what followed after these countries gained independence is that they tried to find their way in how to govern these countries. And what happened is a lot of these countries had leaders that were sort of self-imposed, so to speak, and ruled with an iron fist and a dictatorial rule. And they used the state coffers with, well, pretty much for their own private benefits, right? Feeding their wallets and their pockets and that of their families, rather than that of the countries that they're supposed to be building up after gaining independence. Now, there is a saying that goes that a country gets the leader that it deserves, right? And if that's the case, then, well, maybe we're not very deserving as a continent, because a lot of these leaders were not good for any of their respective countries. Of course, there may be some exceptions to the rule, but in general, so to speak, well, let's just say that they were lacking in terms of building up their countries. And well, I'd like to give you a few examples as we go. Were I to make a movie sequel with regards to the corrupt politicians of Africa, or the corrupt leaders of Africa, I think I would be as successful as, or maybe even more successful than, the Fast and Furious franchise. Anyway, all jokes aside, I'd like to provide you with a small list that I made of leaders that, well, took it to the extremes with regards to dipping their hands into the state coffers. To start off with, I'd like to mention Mobutu Seko Kuku Ngebendu Wazabanga, which is a self-imposed name and means the all-powerful warrior who, because of his endurance and inflexible will to win, will go from conquest to conquest, leaving fire in his wake. Now, Mobutu was the president of Zaire. He changed the name from Congo to Zaire. And, well, let's just say that this guy was very flamboyant in many ways. And he built palaces in Congo, and he owned some houses abroad as well, in France, for example. He even had his own Concorde, and he would regularly fly with his wife to European cities and go on a spending spree, buying, well, whatever he wanted. And she did too. And at the height of his reign, he was worth an excess of 80 billion US dollars. Coincidentally, the debt of his country was roughly about the same. So, that money could easily have been spent towards paying debts, rather than dipping his hand into the coffers and spending it on all kinds of unnecessary things. Next is Jean Bedel Bokassa. Now, this guy did quite a few things similar to Mobutu. You see, he had changed, well, first of all, he took over by military coup, much like, well, the same thing is what Mobutu did. On top of that, he changed the name from Central African Republic. This is Bokassa I'm talking about. Bokassa changed the name from Central African Republic to Central African Empire. You see, Mobutu had also changed the name from Congo to Zaire, because he tried to make things sound more African. And after he was ousted, he was changed back to Congo. Now, for different reasons, Bokassa changed the name from Central African Republic to Central African Empire. You see, the reason why he changed the name is, that's the second thing he did similar to Mobutu, is he gave himself a title. And in his case, he called himself Emperor. Now, upon his coronation, he spent the entire amount that France gave for that year towards building up the country on his coronation. And the party was an epic fail, so to speak, because not only did no one show up that were invited. He invited a lot of dignitaries from all over the world to come to his coronation. The party was also so bad because it completely bankrupted the country due to the amount that was spent on it. Now, imagine spending money on a party where nobody shows up. That's kind of sad. Now, besides that, there's many other things he spent money on that made himself richer, but could have gone to better use towards building up the country. Now, it seems that there is some kind of guideline or set of guidelines that were written down by someone somewhere that all these guys followed, because they all copied each other. And it went something like this. take over the country by means of military coup, check. Afterwards, give yourself a self-imposed title that needs to be as ludicrous as possible, check. Nepotism, check. Cannibalism, check. Plunder the state coffers, check. Kill all your enemies, check. Ethnic cleansing, check. Yeah, the list is endless, and well, they all followed it pretty much to the T. And Idi Amin is no different. He took over Uganda by means of a coup. I don't know if any of you has watched The Last King of Scotland with Forrest Whitaker playing the role of Idi Amin, where he even says at some point that I was a maid in the British Army. Well, not in that accent, more in a Ugandan accent, but you get my drift. Anyway, Idi Amin plundered the state coffers and used it on his lavish lifestyle and, feeding his many wives and kids, as well as the houses he built for himself, etc., etc. The story goes on and on. The next guy on my list is actually still president at this point in time. It's no other than Jacob Zuma, or otherwise known as Jay-Z, who is the president of South Africa. Now, before he became president of South Africa, he was actually very respected. You see, he was a freedom fighter, along with Nelson Mandela, spent some time in exile in several countries, I think Zimbabwe and Zambia, came back and made it to president, and, well, he's been hit with scandals ever since, where one of the examples is that he used state coffers to expand his house, his private home, and he said he did it because he needed to update the security of his home, but instead he just built some more houses on the estate, and also built a swimming pool. So yeah, that's not really improving security, I would say. And upon being caught, eventually he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know I couldn't do this." Very silly reasoning, I'd say. So the next guy on my list does not have a self-imposed title. He actually has a title that was given to him. You see, he is the king of Swaziland. I'm talking about King Mswati. Now, he uses the state coffers much like his own wealth, his own personal wealth. Even though, as a monarch, you say, no, this could be possible, I would say no, there should be rules towards this. Instead of him spending that money on himself and his lavish hobbies such as expensive cars and all his wives, he marries a new one every year, by the way, his palaces, he could maybe spend that money, or that money is better spent on the country itself, as it is one of the poorest in the world, and, well, the HIV rate is one of the highest in the world as well. So that money could be better spent elsewhere, I would say. Now, the debate on whether a democracy is something that works on the African continent or for African countries is a debate that I would like to save for another day. But there is something there's a load I would like to shed off my chest with regards to the matter, and that is about good governance or good leadership. You see, ever since these countries have been gaining independence, this is definitely something that those countries have been lacking for the better half of it, good leadership. And, well, having said that, I would like to bring up the name of a person that is heavily involved towards trying to change this situation. This is no other than Dr. Mohammed, otherwise known as Mo Ibrahim, who was born in 1946 and is a Sudanese-British mobile communications entrepreneur and billionaire. He worked for several other telecommunication companies before founding his own by the name of Celtel, which when sold had over 24 million mobile phone subscribers in 14 different African countries. And this is the part I'd like to talk to you about. After selling Celtel in 2005 for $3.4 billion US, he set up the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. And this is a foundation I'd like to tell you about. The Mo Ibrahim Foundation was set up in 2006 in London and focuses on doing several things. The first thing that it does is it publishes the Ibrahim Index for African Governance, ranking the performance of all 54 African countries. Up until 2009, the index took into account only the 48 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Furthermore, the foundation offers scholarships at University of Birmingham, SOAS, and London Business School. These scholarships are on topics of international development at University of Birmingham, governance of development in Africa at SOAS, and an MBA at London Business School. The scholarships are initiated for African students, both master students and postgraduates. The Ibrahim Foundation also hands out a prize to African leaders that have had to be elected democratically by their respective countries. It furthermore focuses on several things, such as recognizes and celebrates African leaders who have developed their countries, lifted people out of poverty, and paved the way for sustainable and equitable prosperity, highlights exceptional role models for the continent, ensures that Africa continues to benefit from the experience and expertise of exceptional leaders when they leave national office by enabling them to continue in other public roles on the continent. With a 5 million initial payment plus 200,000 US dollars a year for life, the prize is believed to be the world's largest, exceeding the 1.3 million US dollars Nobel Peace Prize. Since being launched in 2006, the Ibrahim Prize has been awarded 4 times. The previous laureates are President Hifikepunye Pohamba of Namibia in 2014, President Pedro Pires of Cabo Verde 2011, President Festus Mogae of Botswana 2008, and President Joaquim Chissano of Mozambique in 2007. Nelson Mandela was the inaugural honorary laureate in 2007. So why am I bringing this all up? Well, on the 27th of February, it was announced that once again, both in 2015 and also last year in 2016, nobody was nominated to win this prestigious award. Now, I totally and utterly agree with Mo Ibrahim that there is a lack of good leadership in the country. And mind you, you don't have to you don't have to take my word for it, but Mo Ibrahim is a person that is an entrepreneur and has been in the business life for many, many years. Set up a company from the ground up and sold it for billions of dollars. He himself is a billionaire. And then he sat down and he thought, what is it that this continent needs? And he came up with the solution that we need more good leaders on the African continent, which is something I totally agree with. Now, why am I mentioning this? Say you're back home or in the diaspora and you feel that politics is your calling. There are many other ways towards helping contributing towards helping the country or the continent to improve. So if you think that politics is your calling, by all means go and do it. Get yourself elected democratically. I know it's not as easy as 1, 2, 3, but seriously, try and do it democratically. And then once you're a leader of your country, or once you're the president of your country or the prime minister of your country, do it with integrity and leave a legacy behind that you can be proud of, so that the people that follow in your stead can continue on building the process, etc., etc. And who knows, after leaving office, maybe you will be nominated and you will win this prestigious award where you get 5 million US dollars up front and then 200,000 US dollars for the rest of your life. Hey, I'm almost tempted to do it myself. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this topic. Subscribe to me on both Facebook and YouTube, and follow me on Twitter. Once again, that's it for today. My name is Kees Kibinda. Goodbye.